Hey, hello, and welcome back to a podcast where I talk about going from corporate drone to corporate dropout as a gaming creator and fitness coach for gamers. I forgot what I was doing there for a second. You know it, you love it. Welcome back to Chaos and Fucker. I swear I eventually will get that down. Today is not that day. Today's Saturday, which means we're talking about all things business and all things being a business creator. And honestly, I want to talk a little bit about dealing with disappointment because it is not the easiest thing. As a creator, as a small business owner, as a human, dealing with disappointment in yourself, in your business progress, in your metrics, whatever it is. And honestly, I feel like I'm constantly facing a new bout of dealing with disappointment and have been for the last 3 years. And a lot of it is disappointment in myself. As a small business owner, as an overachiever, we tend to focus on all of the negative things and never really focus on the positive. We are focusing on metrics not moving the way we want them to. We're focusing on, a video tanking. We are focusing on, lack of sales in particular areas of our business, if that's what, our business is focused on. And you're constantly being beat down and never feel like you've actually met success. And for me currently, it feels like I'm never going to make success unless I actually step away from being an engineer and I'm running my businesses successfully on my own with no one else participating in them financially, other than, I am running self-sufficiently of my own business. And a lot of people in the world right now are dealing with disappointment just with, life, and disappointment in our administration, disappointment in their kids, disappointment in their parents. There is a rising world where adult children are cutting off their parents because of toxic cycles that they want to end. And that can be very disappointing for all involved. It is not easy to continue to improve yourself and watch the people around you not do that. And I feel that in business. When I started streaming as a gaming creator, I surrounded myself with people who did it for fun rather than people who took it seriously, and people who, were just aiming to be an affiliate or just aiming to be a small creator and never get any bigger than that. And at that time in my life, I think I needed that style of community, something fun. I wasn't really thinking of streaming as a major component to my business. It was more just, hey, if I get some awareness points to clients out there, great. Cool, that's awesome. If not, then I don't. And while I needed that outlet at the time, I'm starting to think of streaming and gaming creation a lot more seriously because I would rather gain an audience more organically than try to be salesy all the time on short form platforms. I, as you noticed in my previous rant last week, get very frustrated when people just create slop content in the fitness space to sell themselves and sell their bodies as the reason their clients should hire them. And I get really, really frustrated, and then I try to follow that, and then I get really disappointed when it doesn't work because I'm not in alignment with it. I have been through several business mentors at this point, and I'm dealing with kind of the disappointment of having signed up for one individual thing and that not being what happens in the end. That is something that I am very, very much so struggling with. I had so much hope and joy when it came to joining this mentoring program. It actually felt like I was going to get somewhere for once. And as the program started to change again and they started to get bigger than what they said they would, I felt myself disconnecting from it, and that disappointment came in people that I trusted with my mentorship. And they are still great mentors, but the program, obviously, as business owners, you have to change with the industry as it changes. And I don't love the way things have been changing because I finally felt like I had something that was tailored to me and my uniqueness. And now I'm losing that. And that is a huge disappointment to my business as I'm starting, re-ramping things back up in the middle of the year after dealing with some disappointment in my personal life. And at the end of the day, I can't sit here and play the victim. I have to deal with that disappointment. I have to figure out what my next moves are and decide if this is really for me. Yes, it is absolutely really for me. I might go off on random tangents about how frustrating it is and how I'm crashing out, but at the end of the day, this is what I want. I want more than anything to live a life where I can choose what my morals are and what my stance is, and my company that I work for doesn't get to define that for me anymore because I am defining that for my own company. And I don't have to worry about my life feeling out of connection when it comes to, what I want to do with a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where a lot of my personal disappointment comes from. But when it comes to dealing with disappointment in business, it can be earth-shattering. It can be absolutely destructive when you are in the newer stages of running a business. I feel like I'm never getting anywhere sometimes, especially with the YouTube space. And I feel like I constantly have to be this bubbly, outgoing person that is constantly reaching out to people and utilizing platforms I don't want to be on. And I'm tired of doing all of that. When it comes to disappointment, like people in my life, my business, the universe, if you will, to stop disappointing me. And maybe that is an issue with too high of expectations of these people, too high of expectations of myself, too high of expectations for my business. I, as an overachiever, feel like nothing is impossible as long as you put the work in. And I grew up in an environment where I was told nothing is impossible as long as you put the hard work in. And the reality is I grew up in a bubble. I grew up in a suburban white collar bubble. I grew up with parents who believed in essentially the American dream, and that is not realistic in this world anymore. That is not realistic in this culture anymore. Would I like it to be? Yeah, I would. I would love to still live in that bubble and say that anything is possible. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to be realistic and you can't live in optimism. You have to define the difference between realism and pessimism, but you have to be realist. And not everything is, in fact, possible, no matter how hard you work. And that disappointment settles in real fucking quick. That disappointment starts to leach into everything. And, you look at these big millionaires and wonder, how did they luck their way into it? And people are going to tell you it's not luck, it's hard work. But the reality is a lot of it is luck. Content creation at its core is luck. Yes, you can do the work to look at your SEO, your analytics, put out good content, have an editor, whatever it is that you need to do to create the best content humanly possible. It's a component of it for sure is, in fact, luck. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Luck plays a piece. And that destroys any level of motivation I have to push through these times of absolute destruction in my business, knowing that if I don't hit that lucky moment, I will never be the creator, the business owner, the wife, everything I strive to be within the next 5 years, the next year. Turning 30 is a wild time in your brain. It doesn't mean my life's over, no, but I also definitely wish I was further into what I wish I could be. Don't know how to deal with disappointment sometimes, because I don't ever want to admit that I'm disappointed in someone. I don't ever want to admit that I'm disappointed in myself a lot of the times, because then I have to do the work to admit why I'm disappointed. Then I have to look deep in and see how much of it was actually my fault, and not playing the victim. When you grew up in a family that constantly plays the victim is not the easiest thing in the world. Realizing that this family you've put on a pedestal most of your life is not who they really say they are and who you thought they were is a disappointment that can wreck almost anyone. Realizing that you're alone and that no one is going to come to your rescue is disappointing. And this is, I guess, a continuation of my rant a little bit, because it sounds like I'm giving up, and I'm not. I put new videos out this week. I put new videos out last week. I'm not giving up. I'm pressing on and really dialing in to my fitness gaming niche to hopefully be successful. That doesn't mean I am living on a cloud. I have to stay positive in the sense of knowing I will eventually get there, but will I get there in 5 months like I want to? Maybe. Who knows? Not I, says the fly. And that's the hard part. That is 100% the hard. How do you deal with disappointment? You look at it face on. You say, I'm disappointed in this person, this situation, but here's what I'm going to do to fix it. And this is what I'm going to do to fix it. I am disappointed in my business currently. I am disappointed in me massively. And not to dive into my personal side of my life, but there are some things on that side that I'm also disappointed in, but that's not something to be dealt with on the internet. I can talk about me, disappointments in myself, and I can talk about my disappointments in my business and how I'm going to tackle them going forward. In the hopefully help someone out there who might be listening to this that also is feeling disappointed with their business progress and themselves as a new entrepreneur or a solopreneur or even a senior entrepreneur that just lucked into it early on and is now struggling to kind of keep that balance. I'm disappointed in, first, me. Why am I disappointed in myself? Because I have not been consistent. I struggle a lot to balance everything. And I've talked about that several times on this podcast. I struggle to balance content creation and, being a business owner and working with my clients and keeping my house in order and keeping my pets up to date on all of the things that they need to be up to date on, whether it be feeding them or, making sure that all of their litter boxes are clean or things like that. Those are all things that I struggle with pretty heavily. It's not an easy thing by any stretch of the imagination. And I often need to take a step back and realize that I am not Superwoman. I cannot do it all. But then I get disappointed in myself when I can't do it all. I have been building over the last 6 months routines to some extent. I am not a perfect person, nor will I, but routines that I've never really consistently kept up with when it comes to keeping my house in order, when it comes to keeping myself in order, when it comes to dealing with the personal aspects that impact my business and my ability to perform in my business. I've been dealing with those, and now I'm getting back into the business. I dealt with the disappointment of how upset I was that I haven't been able to do it all. I haven't been able to keep those 4 pillars that I've talked about in line with each other. Some of them were falling off. And the thing is you can't give 100% to everything. Sometimes it'll be 80% to your business and 20% to everything else. Sometimes it's going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be, 25, 25, 25, 25 to each pillar. And hopefully then everything will be even. But you have to set your priorities. And I needed to be slapped in the face and be told that my priorities were fucked. I was so focused on things that didn't matter that I needed to realign myself with me, realign myself with my own morals and guidelines and not what everybody else around me was saying, and realign myself in my relationship with my husband. That was what I needed to do. I needed to get slapped in the face and said, you're fucking up. And I was. And thankfully, I have a partner that is very blunt and very, hey, this is not good. This is not okay. And, some of us grew up in environments where we don't even notice we're doing some of these things. And that's not an excuse, but that is, sometimes you need to be slapped bluntly in the face. And that doesn't make the other person a bad person. I needed it. And I heard it. I heard it loud and clear for the first time, I think, in the 8 years I've been with my husband. He might have been screaming this at me throughout time, but I heard it loud and fucking clear this time. And maybe it was just, I wasn't ready to hear it until that moment. But I've heard it and I've made changes. So I dealt with that disappointment. I dealt with, the disappointment in not being able to do it all. That was the hardest one because I did not know where my business would end up when I was building all of these routines and stepping away from the content because I didn't know how to do it all and I needed to focus on priorities before I focused on my business. I am now in a place where I can slowly start integrating creating content and things like that back into my life. And I'm dealing with the disappointment of letting the momentum go. I'm dealing with the disappointment of, having to feed myself back into the algorithm, make the algorithms happy because I took a break and I was inconsistent once again. I am dealing with the disappointment of some of my videos not doing as well as I want them to, but I'm dealing with them. I look at them face value and I evaluate them logically rather than emotionally. And I think that's been the best thing for me getting off of a little personal story here, getting off of hormonal birth control is I've been able to evaluate things a lot more logically than I have, I'm not as focused on the emotional aspect of things. And that might seem like a bad thing to people, but not having that extra hormonal impact makes me more logical. And I didn't notice how emotionally driven I had become while being on hormones. And that's not to say hormones are a bad thing, because they're not. I talk all about different health and fitness things on the Tuesday episodes of this podcast, and I'm not gonna, demonize anyone who's on hormonal birth controls. There are many reasons why people are on them, and doctors, you do you. I'm giving my own personal experience with getting off of it after being on it for, 7+ years. I feel more logical than I was. I was always a very level-headed, very logical, very straight to the point type of person, and I felt like getting off of that, I have returned to that human. I'm no longer, emotionally controlled by stupid things. And it makes me be able to evaluate my business a lot better than I was able to before. Maybe it's all placebo, and I just think that. It's entirely possible. But dealing with the disappointment in my business was probably the hardest part of returning to my business. Is I felt like a failure once again. For the 500th time, I left the internet, and then I came back and I was like, fuck, I let it go again. But now I can, analyze my analytics. Is it the thumbnail that's working? Is it the video that's working? Is it, how it's being recommended? Because I'm noticing with the video I just put out the day that I'm recording this, that how it's being recommended is weird, which is making something in my SEO is making it being recommended in very weird places. And that is also making my click-through rate kind of ass. My impressions are great, but my click-through rate is horrible. But I can actually look at those things analytically and not like emotionally of, oh, I really enjoyed this video. Why is it not doing well? I'm looking at the numbers again. I'm very analytical. I'm very logical. I'm not, obsessed with videos from an emotional attachment standpoint. And yeah, we all have our videos that we're emotionally attached to, but I'm not doing that anymore, which is leading to less disappointment in my business, ironically. Because when I look at it analytically, oh, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. Because I've also been able to do things like tweak thumbnails and tweak titles to see how impressions change and click-through rate changes, which is a good thing because I haven't always been good at that. I'm learning more and more about the YouTube game, at least on my main channel, where I also am paying for some of the tools to help me analyze some of those things. That helps with disappointment. Sometimes focusing purely on analytics and metrics and the reality helps not get disappointed, because then you can point to what the issues are. That has to be my kind of number one tip when it comes to dealing with disappointment in business. Go back to your analytics. Go back to your metrics. Go back to the basics. Because at that point, you can find out the cause of your disappointment and change it and do better. Are things always going to be disappointing at one point or another? Yes, you're always going to be disappointed with a video not doing well. You're always going to be disappointed with, if you do a sale or a scholarship, it not doing as well as you wanted it to. And I've had that disappointment time and time again. But at the end of the day, I didn't do the work prior to make that happen. And I had no reason to be disappointed in it because I didn't do the work. And that's the key. That is a massive key that a lot of people need to realize. It all comes down to analytics. When we talked about setting non-metric goals, well, what's the point? In the early days, what's the point of setting non-metric goals? It's all about the metrics. It's all about the analytics. It's all about the numbers, except in my case where I also have clients. Yes, the number side is important, but also their satisfaction, their feelings, they're real people. Once they're in my door and they're a client and I start building that relationship with them, they're real people. They're not my business. They're real people. And that's the clear line, right? I can be disappointed in a client and be like, hey, get your shit together, but not be disappointed in, the business side of what I'm doing. So siloing things, while I don't always recommend in business, actually really does help. You have to compartmentalize those things so that you don't get so emotionally involved with your business. And I really struggled with that because, I am a people first business. I'm a creator. I'm a coach. Everything I do involves people and in essence, liking me. And I turned that into a very people pleasy, not version of me I liked. And that took me a really long time to realize that I was changing a lot of who I am to try to be liked on the internet and gain clients that way. And that's not okay. It's not okay to be afraid to be canceled as a business owner when, you're just at the end of the day trying to help people, whether, people always agree with you or not. What your intention is, and intentions do matter. So business disappointment is inevitable. You're going to be disappointed in people. You're going to be disappointed in, employees. You're going to be disappointed in yourself, in your metrics, whatever it is. But you have to, at the end of the day, be able to evaluate it without the emotion and figure out what's causing your disappointment. And I did not do that the first 3 years of my business. I am now doing that and I feel better about my business. And maybe I just feel better because my environment is less chaotic. Maybe we're taking the chaos out of chaos and fuckery. We're taking a lot of the fuckery out of chaos and fuckery. But I think I'm starting to take the chaos out of my life a little bit because a lot of it was self-imposed. I will always have a little bit of chaos because I do like to travel and I do, have a husband that likes crazy hobbies. I will always have chaos. But my day-to-day doesn't have to be chaotic if I don't want to make it that way. I can, organize myself even as an ADHDer. My organize may not be what someone else says is organized, but that's the point. Who the fuck cares what works for Sally Joe over there? If it works for you, it works for you. It's the same thing with fitness. What workout you do, are there optimal workouts? Absolutely. There are more optimal workouts. But if you like swimming, have at it. Go swim. If you like dancing, go dance. It doesn't matter what someone on the internet tells you have to do. Do what you enjoy. And it's the same thing in business. Do it how it works for you. Even if you hire a mentor and they tell you this is the thing that you need to do it, but in your own way. You don't have to follow a strict... You're not in the military. Your mentor is not your drill sergeant. You don't have to follow everything in strict rules and societal norms and everything else. Be fucking crazy and weird, and I can guarantee you people will come to your crazy and weird. And I had to learn that the hard way, so I hope a lot of you don't have to learn that. But... with that being said, dealing with disappointment is not the easiest thing. In people, in business, in metrics, whatever it is, it's just not easy, period. But how you choose to move forward from that disappointment and enact change is the big kicker. You will always be disappointed in something, but being able to make the changes necessary to not be disappointed in that thing again because you've repeated it is the key, especially in business. Because if you want to be successful, continuing to repeat things that disappoint you maybe means you need to make a change. So I appreciate you for being here. And if you have any, other tips when it comes to dealing with disappointment in life, in business, whatever it is, feel free to drop them in the comments below and start a conversation all about dealing with disappointment. And I appreciate you for, like I said, I appreciate you for being here. And next week we'll talk all about more fitness and gaming things, as well as the small business side of the frustration that comes with being a small business owner, I think, at this point, and give you an update on the Kaizen challenge and everything else as we continue to push forward. But yes, I appreciate you and thank you. Welcome to the chaos, and I hope you enjoy the fuckery.